Today's session will be about the Journal Citation Reports, and more precisely about the latest release. So the 2025 release, which is based on the 2024 data. So Journal Citation Reports is an annual report that is usually updated, released once a year towards end of June. And Journal Citation Reports, or JCR, was updated with the latest data on 18th of June. So we'll go through the Journal Citation Reports. I want to show you now the agenda of today's session. So we'll go through an overview of JCR, or Journal Citation Reports. Now I'll focus on how JCR is important to support research integrity. Then I will move on to the 2025 changes. I want to explain what's new in this new edition. And then we'll speak about the data integration. So you will see that JCR data, or Journal Citation Reports data, is also available in other systems. And I want to leave enough time for Q&A, question and answers. So for those of you who've been around and doing research for quite some time, you probably heard about journal impact factor, quartile. It is a Q1 journal, Q2 journal, and so on. So this data is coming from the Journal Citation Reports. This year, we're celebrating 50 years of JCR, 50 years of independently sourced journal intelligence. So JCR started in 1975. Before going through this slide, can you all confirm in the chat whether the sound is good enough? Okay, thank you, Bilal. Rosli, Mohammed, thank you for the confirmation if the sound is good. Perfect, okay. For others who might face some issues with the sound, try to get the best connection possible. Perhaps close the other applications. And for those of you who still face an issue, perhaps try to reconnect. Okay, thanks for the confirmation. So Journal Citation Reports, first year was in 1975, and it was published as part of the SCI, which is Science Citation Index. And it was covering a little bit more than 2,600 journals, 2,630 to be precise. 3 years later, 1978, that's the first year for Social Science Citation Index edition. So, you know, in the Web of Science, we have the core collection. Within the core collection, we have several collections or collections of journals. So science, social science, and emerging, so citation index, and arts humanities. So you will see over time that those indicators published in the Journal Citation Reports have been calculated for each edition. So 1975 science, 1978 social sciences. In 2023, it was calculated for arts humanities and emerging, so citation index. So as you can see, each and every year, Journal Citation Reports evolves with new data, new features, new functionalities. 79 addition of cited half-life. 1980 subject category ranking. So we had the impact factor. A few years later, we've started to rank journals for each category. And JCR, or Journal Citation Reports, had different formats. So at that time, 1990 was as microfiche. So that was the support at the time. 1995, CD-ROMs. For those of you who've been around for quite some time, it was published as CD-ROM. And when the internet came in, let's say in mid-90s, so 1998, JCR had a website format. It was introduced on the web. 2004, more data, more metrics. 2008, we had the journal impact factor, then we had the 5-year impact factor and other indicators. 2014, it was integrated directly into the Insights platform. 2015, again, more indicators to have more data at the journal level as a profile. 2017, we had the percentile citable items, more journals in 236 categories. Enhance the journal profile to have more transparency on the indicator, especially on the journal impact factor. And 2020, data around open access. 2021, we expanded to the remaining collections in the core collection, arts, humanities, and imaging. 2023, journal impact factor calculated for these two collections. 2024, a unified ranking, because at some point we had two rankings depending on the collections. And 2025, that's what I'm interested in today to focus on, is the retraction transparency. So we'll have more data about what's happening at the journal level when it comes to retractions. This is quite important because if you look at the overall context, the publishing context, we have more than, let's say, 48,000 scholarly journals published globally. And the problem is that we know that they don't have the same level of quality and impact, right? When you have such number of elements or entities, you know that it is more challenging to assess those entities, which are in this case journals. So the question is, and this is a report published in 2022. You'll get the presentation if you want to read that report. The question is, as researchers, how do you find journals consistent with your values to showcase your research, right? How do you ensure that your library collections support rigorous research and teaching? And how do you make data-driven decisions about your open access strategy? Just 1 minute. Okay. Just putting a message in the chat for those of you who face issues with the sound. At the same time, something that we see, this is a study from Nature published in December 2023. There is a growing number of retractions, right? So if you look at the past 10, 11 years, 2013 to 2023, that's 11 years of data. You see in orange the number of retractions for journal articles, in blue number of retractions for conference papers. And there is a huge boom in 2023. And you see in 2023, the number of retractions passed 10,000, largely because of more than 8,000 retractions by Hindawi. You might have heard about what happened in 2023 with Hindawi. So huge number of retractions in 2023. But even if you remove 2023, there was already an uptrend from 1,000 journal articles retracted to more than 4,000 from 2013 to 2022. The problem with retractions can happen for many reasons, but the problem is that it undermines research integrity and public trust. But think of it as you researcher, you produce research, but then you produce research to solve some problems, right? To solve issues, to help the public, to help the society, to solve issues, right? But at the same time, if you have a rising number of retractions, that can create some issues in terms of trust. Okay, so that can cause public mistrust in research, can negatively impact future research, and it also harm the reputation of authors, institutions, and journals. Not only the researcher himself. You publish a paper, it is retracted, that harms your reputation, that harms the reputation of your institution, that harms the reputation of your country, and of course that harms the reputation of the journal where the retraction happened. Okay, so, and that also represents a huge amount of waste of research resources. We all know the time it takes to publish, to do research, and then to publish a paper, the time it takes to write a paper, to go through peer review, and then to get it published. That takes time. So researchers, they need reliable, but also publisher neutral tools that provide data, okay, transparent metrics to help them effectively evaluate journals. So we've seen that. So Journal Citation Reports, but also bibliometric data is used in many ways: research evaluation, research management, promotion, but it is also sometimes misused. And I want to go through some examples of how the data, bibliometric data, can be misused, and that drives, questionable behaviors, fraudulent behaviors. You might have heard about the expression salami slicing. I recommend you don't do that. You basically do a study, you get a lot of data, and you split the data. Like a salami, you split it from a single study to publish multiple articles, right? So that's obviously, that raises some ethical questions. Inappropriate self-citations. Some institutions, some countries, government, they look at the citations as an indicator of impact, but then you keep citing yourself. You cite yourself to get more citations. You don't cite yourself if that doesn't make sense. A citation is basically you cite a relevant study that is used in your own study. Self-citation is fine, but then when it becomes inappropriate or excessive, that creates some issues. Self-citation is not only at the author level, right? A self-citation, I cite myself, that's a self-citation at the author level. I cite my colleague who is in the same department or the same institution, that's a self-citation for the university, right? So if I take a university A, I have one researcher publishing a paper and he cites his colleague, but that citation doesn't make sense. That's a self-citation for the institution. And you can do the same at the journal level and at the country level. So at the journal level, I publish a paper in Nature and I cite another paper from Nature. That's for Nature, that's a self-citation. Even if the paper that I cited is not my paper, that's still a self-citation at the journal level. And then you have coercive citation. I could show you an example. That's basically a pressure. That was a recent case of a peer reviewer asking the author or suggesting to the author to add citations that don't really make sense. Okay. So that's also abuse of bibliometrics. Let me try to see if I have that example in mind. The one I have is retraction. This paper is a joke or something like that. Let me show you. Yeah. You see paper with completely irrelevant citations retracted. And it was funny because the authors themselves, they say in the acknowledgement, as strongly requested by the reviewers, here we cite some references, 35 to 47. That's 9 citations. although they are completely irrelevant to the present work. So be careful, you shouldn't cite, even if the reviewer himself or herself is suggesting to cite some papers. And it was interesting because if you read that paper, so that paper was retracted. Okay, that paper was retracted. The authors themselves, they were invited to submit the paper to another journal by Elsevier. Yeah, the authors have already submitted the paper to the same journal because it was indeed published without a normal peer review. And if you look at the 13 references, all of them included these two authors. Looked like maybe they are brothers. So 13 references by this author and one by this person. So that's what we call coercive citation. And then you have citation marketplaces. It's basically the market, right? So you bring parties who are willing to cite with people who are willing to pay for citations. Okay. I have a paper, it's almost ready. You want more citations, you go to that marketplace and you say, I want to buy citations and I can pay for those citations. And you have another type of marketplace, which is the author marketplace, which I have a manuscript. It's ready for submission. I'm single author, but I thought, you know what? I can have a second co-author, third co-author, and so on. So I'm ready to sell a place to be an author in my manuscript. So here you buy and sell citations. Here you buy and sell authorship. And then you have paper mills, which are basically factories. They produce and fabricate manuscript. And they even provide fake peer review. I mean, you can imagine now how easy it is to generate text with like tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and so on. And you can even generate fake peer reviews. And then you have predatory publishers. Predatory publishers, I think, is quite old. I think early 2000, where you invite people, you send an email, and you say, I saw, for example, your preprint, it's amazing and it's great. We're ready to publish it without peer review. And the only thing you have to do is you just pay. You pay $100, $200. And then you basically charge a fee. And that's how you make business. You set up a website, you start inviting people, you send an email, you send messages over WhatsApp and so on. And that's an issue, especially for young researchers who hear, oh yeah, it's a journal. They told me it's indexed. They told me it has an impact factor. It looks like it's a serious journal. But then at the end, you realize it's a scam. You paid 200, 300. I remember there was a student from the region. He almost paid 600 euros, which is massive. In some countries of the region, it's much higher than what the minimum wage is. And that's also a major issue. And then you have hijacked journals. Hijacked journals, it's like a copycat of a journal. You take a good journal, okay, from a good publisher, and you copy exactly the website, exactly the same website. You just change a few things in the URL, in the website address, and they create basically a fake journal, which looks good. You submit your paper to this journal, and at the end you realize you just submitted to a hijacked journal. Let me show you. Let me show you an example. I remember let me put that in the chat. So if you want to read this, because this is quite real, let me put it in the chat. And I remember I put that in my LinkedIn. Hijacked journal. I put a post. Yeah, it's like a scam. Let me put that as well in the chat if you want to read it. And I will show you a few examples. So I posted that 7 months ago, as you can see. And there's, for example, if you look at this, for those of you who are familiar with Springer, so you have springer.uk.com instead of springer.com. So they created a fake journal, fake website. For those of you who published with Springer and so on, you could say, yeah, this looks good, right? This is the official website of the journal. They copy everything, like the ISSN, the name, everything. Looks very professional. But then the URL you see, it's springer.uk.com, which does not exist. The real website is springer.com. And the same with science a domain with directs with an S instead of sciencedirect.com. And you see, they copied exactly the same design. So you go here and you say, well, I want to submit a paper to this journal, right? You sign in my account and so on, but you realize you just been scammed, right? So I recommend you try to be careful when it comes to this to these issues. Okay, so I covered those fraudulent behaviors, and here what we see is that all of these is increasing. I think at some point in like 15, 20 years ago, it was mainly about salami slicing. We already had those citation like cartel or mafia, you cite me, I cite you, and so on, self-citation. But then we have new things like paper mills is relatively recent, author marketplaces as well, citation marketplaces and so on. But that can impact your career, right? And obviously, we don't want to do that. I think there was another. I want to show you this as well. I think it was Retraction Watch. I think it's a recent one. No, sorry, it was on Nature. Marketplace. Paper marketplace, I think. Let me see if I can find it. I'll come back to that. Yeah. I should have it in my presentation. Okay. Yeah, that's the one. Okay. So I remember this article from Nature, which is also quite recent. Let me put it in the chat as well. Yeah, so 9th of June. So was earlier this month. Authorship for sale investigates. So there was a study. We look at companies that sell authorship. I recommend you don't do that, because at some point you might be identified as someone who bought a paper. And they take an example like March. There's a researcher from university in Saudi Arabia. He published 20 papers in 2024. I don't know if you realize 20 papers in 2024. That's massive. In 2023, he published only 2, right? And we know that in some countries you need more papers to get promoted and so on. And yeah, paper mills, they make their business take advantage of desperate and lazy researchers. Some operate as marketplaces. Others take published papers and use AI to tweak text and graphics. I'm dealing with many writers from India, Pakistan, $400 per paper. So you pay $400 and you have a paper under your name, right? And for other papers, he paid only $20. Okay, that's yeah. So I mean, obviously, that gives you an idea of what's happening in out there in the market. So the point I want to make here is that all of this is rising in terms of issues, but also like retractions. that we see, those fraudulent behaviors, and we need good data. We need transparent and reliable data. Clarivate, for those of you who know the Web of Science core collection, the logic has always been on indexing content that is good, like high quality content. And that's why we're selective. You might have heard, okay, this journal is not indexed in the Web of Science. It doesn't have impact factor because it's not indexed. It's not indexed because it's not good enough, right? So we focus on selectivity. Once we decide if a journal is good enough to be indexed, we're gonna index the data. And that's also very important. Like deciding a journal is good, that's only one part of the problem. Then you need to get all this data in a good way because you're gonna do some analysis on it. You know, the analysis at the author level, the country level, the institutional level, by field, and so on. So we need good data to do good analysis. It's the same. I can give you like millions of data points, but if the data is unstructured and it's not good enough in terms of structure, you won't be able to run a single analysis in that data set. And then we rely on ISI expertise. So that's our research center, who's been around since the 50s, to provide metrics that we can trust. That's the logic behind how we do things at Clarivate. So Journal Citation Reports. Let's speak about Journal Citation Reports now. Why or how do we use Journal Citation Reports for? The goal is to assess the world's leading journals with transparent, publisher-neutral journal intelligence. Clarivate is not a publisher. Clarivate does not publish journals. So right now we have more than 22,000 journals in the Journal Citation Reports, and we give you several elements to get a sense of the profile of a journal. Again, I know many of you are comfortable with the journal impact factor, the quartile, it's a Q1 journal, and so on. But all of these are single data points. It doesn't give you the whole, the holistic view of or the profile of the journal. So again, Journal Citation Reports is built on selectivity, reliability, because we select journals. We look at journals that we can trust based on the editorial selection process. In the presentation, you'll get access to this process if you want to look at it. It's quite well known. We look at 28 points of evaluation, 24 related to quality, 4 related to impact. And then what we focus on here is that we look at accurate and complete data. So for example, some journals that show excessive self-citation and citation stacking, right? So which is you accumulate lots of citation from a small number of journals or from the journal itself. We suppress the journal impact factor in the Journal Citation Reports. Everything that is in the Journal Citation Reports is transparent. So we show you the relationship between the article and journal citations. And you can also monitor in the master journal list on a monthly basis. You can see, so let me show you how you do that. If I go to master journal list, you will see, so you need to be logged in with a free account, the same account you use to access the tools like Web of Science and Journal Citation Reports. Okay, so if I go here, you will see the monthly changes, right? So it was updated 16 of the month of June, yeah, 2 weeks ago. And you need to be logged in, so let me log in very quickly. Okay, it automatically signed me in, right? So here, if I go here, you will see per month the journals that have been, the changes that we've done in the database, in the Web of Science core collection, okay? So you have the first 6 months of 2025, and then you have the changes in 2023 and the changes of 2024. Okay. And back to my point, when we talk about Journal Citation Reports, it's a report in the sense that you don't say this journal ABC, the impact factor is 5. That's it. It's a report in a sense that it's the full profile of the journal. So you'll have data around the impact, data about the open access, the institutions who contributed to the journal, and so on. You will see that I talk about profiles. That's something we've been saying for ages. There was been a report published in January 2019 by ISI called Profiles, Not Metrics. Everything that you want to evaluate, we're talking about a profile of a country, profile of an institution, profile of a researcher, profile of a journal. Don't say a researcher has 10 papers. I need more context about that, right? So that's the one part of the story. And then you have the visualization. So that's a report that is more recent, 2023. So you move beyond metrics, and we showcase here that visualizations, graphics, figures, sometimes they tell a better story of just a number. Okay. And those visualizations, we have them in Journal Citation Reports. I'll show you later. Dr. Adrian Garfield, the founder of Web of Science, but also Journal Citation Reports, he said in 2006, the impact factor should be used with informed peer review, not as a substitute for it, right? Every time you want to do evaluation, you use those indicators as complements. They don't replace expert or peer review. Okay, so that's very, very important thing to keep in mind. You don't rely on a metric. Yeah, I mean, a researcher might have 300 papers, but we know that researchers, we know how he does research, and something's fishy, strange about how those papers have been published, right? Although 200 or 300 papers might seem great as an indicator. So you'll see in the Journal Citation Reports a few things that I want to showcase here. That's the complete view of a journal performance, right? So you'll see the frequency of publication, the journal performance, journal impact factor, the journal citation indicator, total citations, citation distribution, open access, the rank, very important, because if I tell you the journal has an impact factor of 4.2, that doesn't tell me much until I tell you, well, this is a journal in publishing in biodiversity and ecology, and it is ranked 9 out of 75. 9 out of 75 give me more context than the impact factor, which is 4.2. Okay, and then you have the citation network, where the citations come from, which journal, and which journal is cited by this journal. And then you have content metrics, the contribution by organization, the institutions which publish in this journal, and the countries that publish in this journal. Okay, so it gives you a mix of several data points. It's like the report of a student. At the end of the year, if I just tell you your student scored, I don't know, 12 out of 20, or it scored 45 out of 100, I need more information. In which field? Where does the student stands against peer or colleagues? Okay, and so on. And then in terms of transparency, you will see those graphics where we tell you basically what is what. Okay, so you'll see a type of metrics that you'll get, number of citations, citation median, and so on. If we look at here, we know, for example, there's a difference between articles and reviews. Okay, reviews typically get more citations than articles. Then I want to focus on two classic indicators, the journal impact factor and the journal citation indicator. They show different stories. They tell different stories. The journal impact factor is calculated. So the journal impact factor you will see today in Journal Citation Reports, the latest one, is the 2024. And it is published in 2025 because it takes time to do all this calculation. First of all, we wait for 2024 to finish. And then around end of March, early April, there is a cutoff date, and we say we consider 2022, 2023, and 2024 complete. We take the citations and we divide the citations by number of items published in these 2 years. This is a raw number. It's an average. It's not normalized. It doesn't tell you much about is 4 high, 5 high, is 20 high, is 2 high. We don't know. There is no normalization here. Then there is another indicator called Journal Citation Indicator, where we normalize. We take a longer period and we normalize by field. Okay, so I'll show you some examples in a moment. I've already went through the history of JCR, but what's important in 2025 is the retraction policy. What we've done is that we exclude now citation to and from retracted records. Okay, so we take a journal, we look at retractions, and we look at the citations that come from retractions, and same journals, the retractions. And if it's the case, we remove those citations. I'll give you an example. So what's new in this year's release? We have, as I told you, more than 22,000 journals, majority in science, about half in social sciences, 3,000 in arts humanities. There are 618 journals that got their journal impact factor for the first time. 6,000 are gold open access, and then 111 countries are represented. Same number of subject categories, still 254. And 20 journals, we removed their journal impact factor because of strange behavior. How is the journal impact factor calculated? It's the same formula, citations divided by number of papers, but starting from 2025, we remove citations from and citations to retracted and withdrawn publications. All these papers that are retracted or are withdrawn from the journal, they might have been cited. They might have had time to be cited. So we remove those citations. Citations from retractions. So if your paper is cited by a retraction, we don't consider that citation as well. Citations from retraction and citations to retractions. So let me show you how it looks like. I'll take an example of a journal. The 2024 journal impact factor is as follows. We take 4,806 citations, okay, and we remove 2 citations from a 2024 plus 2 citations from a 2024 publications, 2 retracted, okay. So we remove those citations and we get a new impact factor. So then so here there is no huge impact, because if you do 4,806 divided by 1,015 instead of 4,810, there is no dramatic change, right? Because it's still rounded on 1 decimal. But then you have other journals where instead of 10 citations, you get 8 divided by 10. The impact factor moves from 1 to 0.8. Okay. So that's basically how the change is implemented in today's release. So 2 questions in the chat. Yeah, you will all get a certificate. And a question from Ahmed. Yes, you will get the presentation within a few days. You will be able to download a copy of the presentation. You'll get the email with a link to download the presentation. Okay, and then in terms of data integration, that's my last point of the presentation before taking any questions. So the data from Journal Citation Reports is already available in other platforms, like the Web of Science. If you go to the Web of Science, let me show you an example very quickly. So if you do a search in the Web of Science, I'll do any search, doesn't really matter. Yeah, national planning, whatever the topic you do a search on. Okay. If I take International Development Planning Review, that's a journal, I can view the impact. I already have the journal impact factor within the Web of Science and the Journal Citation Indicator, and that's the latest one. Okay, 2024. Remember, 2024 is the latest one, which is published in 2025. So similarly, there is also data in ProQuest. If you use ProQuest platform, you'll get the data there. For those of you librarians, for example, using Alma, you will also see the data coming from Journal Citation Reports. Yeah, another question in chat. You don't need to sign any attendance list. I will get the list of attendees after the webinar. Okay. Yeah, there's no link to. You already registered. Since you registered, I will have the list of participants. Okay. So, and then there's also an API. We have an API that helps you, that allows you to retrieve the data through scripts, through programs, right? So instead of going to the platform and searching for the data, you know, and going to the interface, the website, you can get the data directly from through the API. Okay. Is there any questions we have? Let me go through the chat and the Q&A. Okay, there's a good question from Dr. Yahya, who's asking, is there a way to inform universities with retracted papers related to them so they can follow up and be more careful in future publication? Yeah, so that's slightly off topic, but that is possible in the Web of Science, but also in Insights. I can show you. If I take any university, right? If I say affiliation and anyone can give me an university. If I say, let me do, I don't know, King Saud University, just take a random institution in the region. What you could do is the following. You could go here, document type, and say retracted publication and retractions, right? So you have two things. So here, so these are, you see, number of papers per year. So in 2025, which is not, we just completed 6 months of 2025. We have more than in 2024. Okay, so you could do an analysis. I mean, of course, you get the list 560, right? And you could do a trend if you want. So you see only 4 in 2016, 2022 183. That's massive, and so on. So I can do something like this. And then in Insights, it's even easier. Yeah, so something I could do also is this. I could do globally. I say year published. Let's say 1900 since 1900 till 2025, 97 million publications. It's going to take a little bit of time because that's a lot of data. Okay, and we could do an analysis very quickly. So 60. LinkedIn as well, is that you will see it's impacting a lot of emerging countries, right? So this is Egypt, Iran, China, Saudi Arabia, China, US, India, and so on. So you could also do that at the country level. At the country level, you would say, Okay, let's have a look at countries. And as I told you, we have a lot of so-called emerging countries: China, India, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and so on. Right, so relatively easy to do this analysis. Yeah. Another question on yeah, so I got a lot of institution in the chat. University of KwaZulu-Natal, about that. You've seen how I've done it. Wish you could do that as well. Yeah, on insights, that's another question. To say from University of Information Technology and Communication, Iraq. Yeah, so I recommend you reach out to me, or you'll get my email, and then we can take it from there. Impact factor, yeah, it is available. So I can show you here, for example, if you go Journal Citation Reports, you'll get the categories. So if I take any category in chemistry, I have 21 subcategories. If I take energy and fuels, right, I get the list, 182 journals. 182, the highest impact factor is 60, but then it goes down quite quickly. You see 37, 35, and so on. So here, if I pick one journal, for example, this one, a random one, I will have the profile of the journal, as I mentioned. The latest year is 2024. Okay, it's publishing 8 issues per year. First electronic JCR year was 2015. It's publishing in English. That's an Elsevier journal, and it's publishing in 3 categories. So since it's publishing in 3 categories, it would have only have one impact factor, but so 3 different rankings and potentially 3 different quartiles. So let's have a look. So you see here, it started to publish content in other categories, as we can see here. You have the breakdown of the publications by number of citations. So that's also a good indicator. If you publish in this journal, where is your paper? Okay, where is your paper here, and where do you stand? Then you have the journal impact factor. So you have 2 axes. The left is the journal impact factor. That's the bar graph. Okay, so latest impact factor is 12, as you can see, GIF 12.0. And with that impact factor, the journal has, because it's publishing in several categories, it has several percentiles. But the percentile is quite high. You see, it's around 92 for this category, and then 97 for another category. 97.4 for construction, 91 for green, 91.1 for the energy and fuels, and so on. So that's the percentile. And you do the same with the journal citation indicator. So now 1.96, you have a definition here. Anything that is above 1 tells me that this journal gets 96% more citation impact than the average in that category. So 1.96, it tells me it's getting 96% more citation impact than the average in the category. Okay, I've explained that during the presentation. You have the median for the reviews, median for articles. Here, it tells me there are 63 articles that got cited only 1 time. And then here you have 25 articles and 5 reviews that have been cited more than 50 times. That's what this graph is telling me. Open access, I think it's a hybrid journal, so you can publish in gold open access, but also traditional subscription and free to read. And then you have the rank. So because it's publishing in several categories, you have the journal impact factor is the same, 12. In construction, 12 ranks this journal as 3rd out of 95. In energy and fuels, it would be 16. It is 16 out of 182. In green and sustainable science and technology, this journal is ranked 9th out of 102. So you get the quartile and the percentile. And then you have the rank by the second indicator, journal citation indicator. The citation network, here you see the cited half-life, the papers, is the journal citing recent publications or old publications. And then you have the relationship. This journal is citing a lot of papers from this journal, Sustainable City Society, I think, Sustainability Basel, Build Environment, Energy Buildings, and so on. So this is what the researcher who publish in this journal, that's what they cite. Okay, and sorry, so here it's cited data. So the journal that cite this journal, the citations are coming from this journal. And then the researchers who publish in this journal, okay, they cite this journal. So here, that's the source of the citations received by this journal. So where the citations are coming from, they're coming from these journals. And the researchers, what do they cite? They cite these journals. Yeah. So let me see if there is any other question. Yeah, let's see. Q&A. Yeah, what is the impact of retracted papers on the faculty? Should the university make anything according to this issue? Yeah, that's a very good question. Obviously, the impact is quite negative, depending on the reason of the retraction, right? Because the paper can be retracted for many reasons. It can be plagiarism, can be manipulated data, fake data. It can be depending on the reason. But obviously, the impact is not positive. Okay, the few questions that are repetitive. Yeah, Jose, you will get an email from me with the certificate and the presentation. So all of you will get my email address. Just give me a few days, you'll get some communications from me. Yeah, you'll get the recording as well. Yeah, so Journal Citation Reports is built on Web of Science core collection data. So if you look at other databases, we might not have that journal indexed. But I can do a search. That's a question from Nada. There are several ways you could use a search for a journal. So if I go to Journal Citation Reports, you can search by journal name, ISSN. You can explore fields or categories, the publisher, if I put like Springer, Taylor Francis, whatever, or the country of the journal. So now the example is remote sensing of environment. And Nada is saying that the impact factor is 11.4. The latest one is indeed 11.4. That's a good reflex to have. Whatever you see on the internet or by email, if someone tells you the journal has impact factor of X, you have the tool to check if what the journal is saying is true or not. Predatory journals, they obviously lie about their index everywhere, but once you start searching, you realize that it's all lots of lies. Yeah, so question why the percentage shown in Clarivate differs from the one in Scopus for the same journal, simply because when you do a calculation of percentile, 6.2, and I guess the other database has a different indicator. It's not the impact factor, it's called site score, and they might have a different journal, right? So in that case, the percentile would be different. Yeah, the certification, you'll get the certification very, very soon. A good question from Bilal. What if a retraction happens after the release of the new quartile, say in August? Will the quartile be updated in real time or wait for the next release next June? Yeah, that's a good question. So here, and that's very important, here, when you look at journal profile, and that's why I highlighted this several times, it's the 2024 release. Sorry, it's the 2024 edition, which is released in 2025. So here, when you look at this data, it's based on 2022, 2023, 2024. So when all these calculations were made, 2025 was happening, but we didn't take into account this data. So the answer is yes, the data is updated in the next release, which is going to be next June 2026. At that time, you will see the 2025 edition, right? Today, we're talking about the 2025 release, which is based on 2024 edition, 2024 data. Okay, so thank you very much. We on time. Yes, Hassan, you'll get the link to the recording so you can rewatch as much as you want. You can share across as well. Let me see if there's any other question. Okay, is there any other questions? Okay, I don't see new questions coming in. Well, thank you very much for attending. I'll send you all the information as mentioned earlier. And yeah, if any questions, feel free to let me know. For now, take care, and yeah, don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. I see some questions around like insights and so on. Feel free to reach out to me, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best. Have a nice summer and take care. Thank you.